Hello guys, Samarth on this side, back again with new tutorial video. In this video, we are going to learn REST API development with Node.js and Express from scratch and deploying it to the cloud. So let's start the tutorial. Before jumping into the code, let's first learn about some tools and technologies that are going to use in this tutorial. So let's first talk about the Node.js. So what is Node.js? Node.js is a JavaScript runtime environment. What do you mean by that? Let's understand with a simple example. You must know about the web development. So if you know about the web development, you must use HTML and CSS a lot. Along with the HTML and CSS to add the functionality in the browser, we use JavaScript. But we can use the JavaScript outside of the browser as well to make a web service where we can perform create, read, write and other operations in the database. So that's called the web service, and we can make that web service with the help of JavaScript. So in that case, we can run JavaScript outside of the browser to make a web service, and that possible through Node.js. So let's talk about API. What is API? API means Application Programming Interface. So what is that? It's a mechanism that enables the communication between two software components with a set of definitions and protocol. What that means? Just like there is a software component and there is another software component. That software component requires some of the data with some processing from that component. So how can that will take? That will take through the API. Our API will be called there, and that API call will be done from that to this, and after that what will happen, that software component will process some of the data and return the data to that component, and that the communication between that software component and that software components is done through API. So now let's talk about the REST API. So what is REST API? REST API is a popular form of APIs that are available in the market. What is the full form of REST? It means representational state transfer. It is a basic architectural API style that defines a set of protocols for making a web service. It is even popular among the developers for its simplicity, flexibility and easy to use. And it also uses less bandwidth, so it is very much useful in case of internet usage. So how that REST API is work? There will be a client that will make a request just like get, post, put, delete to a web service. Web service process the data. After processing the data, web service will be return the response as a form of as a link to the resources, and that's how the REST API works. In most of the cases of the response from the web service, the JSON is the most popular used resource. So guys, let's first start with the installation of necessary tools. First you have to come to that website node.js.org, and you have to first install the LTS version. This is the most stable version for the Node.js. After downloading that LTS version installer, what you have to do, go to do the installation process through the installer in some simplest way. After that, what you have to do, go to that website postman.com, download and install that software in our local system. This is a tool for use for the API testing purpose. It is a very popular tool used by the 20 million developers. Now after installing the Node.js successfully, just open the terminal and you have to write a comment here. What's the comment? That will be node version. If it is printing successfully in your system, then okay. If it is not printing successfully or giving any error, what you have to do, you have to first find out the installed folder of Node.js under the programming files. For me, it is D drive because I manually manipulate it. And what you have to do, first copy that path of that Node.js folder under that programming files and open your environment variables. After that, go to the environment variables, click on that path, edit it, click on the new and paste it here. After that, you have to click on OK. After that, what you can do, run your terminal again, and in case of Windows, run in as a administrative mode. After that, you have to check with the same command node version. I am pretty sure if you done that step, after that, that node version will be print successfully. And you can also check one thing along with the node version, npm version. If both that printing in your system successfully, that means the node.js is successfully installed in your system. So now what we have to do, you have to first come under that folder where you want to make all file and folder for that project, and under that folder make a new folder named as REST API tutorial. You can give your own name, but for that tutorial purpose I give that folder name REST API tutorial. Then you have to come under that folder, and under that folder you have to open that terminal, and you have to write a comment here, that is npm init. So what that comment will do, that comment actually initialize a node project under that directory. Now it will ask you some question, you have to give it answer here. So they are saying the package name will be REST API tutorial. I say it's okay, so I press enter. Version 1.0.0, okay. Description. After that they are asking about the entry point index.js. I am not very comfortable with that name, so I give is api.js. You can give your own name as well. After that they are want the test command ignore git repository. We are not connecting it with any git repository right now, so I ignore it. Keywords ignored. Author obviously me. You can give your own name here, that's not mandatory. And license, give a common license MIT. And after that they are asking if that information is okay or not, so I say yeah, that's the information is okay, and I write yes here. And you can see one more thing here, a file named as package.json is here. Now what we have to do, under that folder REST API tutorial that we made, where this is our project folder, what you have to do, you have to open the terminal here, and you have to write here code dot and enter. Project folder will be open under the Visual Studio Code, and I obviously trust that. So now what we can do, under that Visual Studio Code, click on that terminal and click on that new terminal. After that, what you have to do, you have to first install some packages under that project folder so that we can forward. Now we have to install the Express as a package here so that we can make our API. So what we have to do, we have to write the command npm install, or instead of the install you can write I. Install and I with npm is totally valid. Express, and that will install Express package under our project folder. And you can see an interesting thing here. After installing the Express package, you can see there is a node modules folder is automatically created. So this is the automated created folder for every node project. So in case of every node project, you can see that folder here. Here library data of any package exists. You don't have to care too much about the node modules package. We will get back here soon. After that, what you have to do, in case you remember, we write a comment. The main entry point is api.js. So what we have to do, under that project root, you have to make a file name as api.js, and we can close the terminal. After that, what you have to do, you have to write constant express equal to require express. That the Express package we just install with our terminal, where that the index is located. So you have to first come to the package.json file, and under that package.json file, here under the dependencies, you can see the Express is showing with the proper version that are installed. So we are now importing that Express with that require method. Instead of that, you can use your ES module just like in that way, import Express and Express, but in case of backend project, I prefer through that way. So after that, what we have to do, we have to now declare a variable f that will be the object of Express. Now we have to listen to our server for any of the changes. So for that, what we can do, we first have to write a port number. For example, I am giving the port number here as 8000. You can give any numeric port number here of 4 digit. After that, you have to listen to the changes. So for listen to the changes, what you have to do, you have to write app.listen, and here you have to put the port number, and after that listen method will be give you a method callback function. You have to write here some comment so that we can understand the server is listening. So what we can write here, we can write here console.log, and we can write a message server is running at port, and give the port name here. Okay, so now we can write the port so that server can listen and we can debug it. But how can we start the server? For starting the server, we have to come back to the package.json, and under that script just remove that comment and write start. And what we write here, we have to first write node, that is the comment, and what file we have to run, api.js. So we have to run api.js. How can we now start the server? We have to first open the terminal of VS Code, and you have to write here npm start. What is that start? The start method is described under the script tag. So if we enter here, you can see server is running at port 8000. That means the server is running. So if we go to that browser and write localhost 8000. Okay, let's first understand what the localhost is. So I call the GitHub API, and you can see that some of the data is come here. So what is that localhost 8000? When you hosted your that web service of that backend in a remote server, IP address will be assigned there. So when the IP address will be assigned there, the IP address will be shown here. Otherwise, the site name with a subdomain will be shown here. When that web service in our local system, that means no IP address is assigned here or no domain is assigned here. So in that case, the local host is showing there. So local host means the local server denoting. And what is that 8000? If you can remember, we give the port here at 8000. That means we want to run that web service at 8000 port. So we can use any port number in where in that server we want to run that port. Okay, so if we write localhost 8000 and enter, you can see cannot get slash, but that service is running as shown in the console of VS Code. But what that message? Cannot get slash. So get is a API method. So what that API method? Just like when you call here api.github.com, the some data is come here. So the API that we can directly call from the browser, it is called the get API. Okay, so that api.github.com is a get API. So first target in our web service is to make a get API. So for making the get API, we have to first come back to our editor, just minimize the terminal, and under that project root, we have to make a new folder name as router. Under that router, you can give a router file name just like, and under that what you can do, write constant express required express, the same line we are written under that api.js. And here the twist here, now we have to give a variable router. Instead of getting the object of express, we have to write here express.router. What is express.router? That will return the object of router. And now what we have to do here, the important step, we have to call that router from that api.js. So for node.js, if we want to call any method from other file to another file, we have to first export that calling things from that file. So how can we export that? we can write here module.exports and give the router here, because we want to export the router from this file. We want to use the get API. So what we can do here, we can write here router.get, and we have to now give here the path name. So what is the path name? Let's understand first. If you come at the GitHub API, you can see there is many more things is going on, many more URL is given. So let's just copy that URL, paste it here. I have to give my GitHub username here, and you can see my GitHub account public data is here. Okay, so what the route path here? That the selected portion is the route path here. That's the base path of the API, and that's the route path of that API. Now we have to give that route path. We can give the route path as our choice. So I can get back to the Visual Studio Code and give here hello. And what that get method will be support, that will support the route name at first, and after that that will support any number of callback function. So for now we make a single one callback function. That callback function will return some of the parameters, that is request and response. So what is request? We will understand request betterly when we work with many other API methods just like post, put, delete. Now we can deal with response. So you can see here, when I call that API from the browser, that's the get API, some data is come. Okay, so when we call that from here in that way, how can we show some response or some data in the browser? So how can we do that? It's very simple. You have to write return res.send and give the message name. Hello viewers, I give the message name here. The things is not done yet, because if you go here and check here, the same thing is here. So what's the wrong here? We have to now map that app with that router that we export from here. So how can we do that? First, you have to take the file path of that first route. So how can we do that? We have to import that file that's under the router and first route. And what we can do, we have to use in that way app.use, and just remember here, from calling any route method or route file, especially from that main entry point. So what we have to write app.use and first give a path name, just like here you given here, and the router file path here that we imported here. Okay, so what we have to write here, under that use method, you have to write first the path name, same as the path name you use here, and then the router file path here. I give here that /API, and that will redirect to that file, and that will be /hello. So what will be our path name? /API/hello. But you have to keep in mind one thing, when we changes anything in the API, we have to first go here and we have to first close that server and rerun that server. Otherwise that API call will not work. So you can see here the /hello is not working. So what we have to write? /API/hello. Okay, now you can see here hello viewers. So that's our whole path. So that's /API, it is coming from the api.js file, and that /API, it is pointing that first route path. That router is pointing here, and that's router is pointing towards that method /hello. So the whole path is made as /API, and that is connected to the /hello. That's why it is printing hello viewers that we sent from here. We successfully made a get API through Node and Express. Now you can do a small thing here in our code. You can see when we changes anything in our code, we have to first close the server and rerun the server. So for avoiding that, we first close the server here at first in the terminal and come here under that package.json. In the terminal now we have to install a package named as nodemon. So what we have to write, npm install nodemon. So what the nodemon package? Nodemon package is restart our local service again and again when there is any changes in the code. So you can see here under the dependency nodemon of specific version is installed. So what we have to write here? We have to write a small changes here. Instead of node, we have to write nodemon. And what you can do here, clean the terminal and write npm start with the same command. You can see the server is running at port 8000, and you want to see the best beautiful thing of that, you can see here app.use. I can write here API/v2 and I also give the fast route path. You can see here the server is automatically started. Here the server is started again, and there's the server is automatically started. Okay, so that's the beautiful thing about the nodemon. As we added a path here API/v2, let's test it if it is working or not. So here you can write here instead of the API/v2, and that will be only single slash, and you can see here hello viewers, it is working totally fine. So guys, I can assume that you understand the get method. Now let's talk about the other API method, that is post. But before proceeding to the post API method, let's clarify where that get post we used. Actually, if you know the basics of HTML, you already used it before. Let me show you how. If you use the HTML forms, then you must build that kind of forms with some CSS, with more style. I understand that totally, but you made that form, okay? And for making this form, you use that kind of code. Here under that some input method is there, but here you can here you also notice a tag name as method. You can here use the get or post. So for using the get means we are calling a get API with that form data. API is calling with the post method with that input field data. For using the get data, we also already made the API. Now we have to take care for the post method. So what is the post method? Except get method, any other API method we can't directly call from the browser. So how can we call the post method? That's why you have to use Postman. So what is Postman? Postman is a free API testing tool used for the developer extensively. So let's first make a post method API, then we can test it here. So come back here and let's first create a post API. So for making the post API, we have to first install a package named as body parser. So open the terminal. That terminal is used for running our server. So don't worry, we make a new terminal here. Here you have to write npm install body parser. Okay, and let's install it. So what is that body parser method? So let me tell you one thing. When we call the post API, some of the data is passing through that API method, and with that data we have to perform some functional operations. So body parser is here to converting that required parameters data, that required data that is coming with the post method API call to the JSON when we are using it for the manipulation purpose in our web services. Okay, so how can we use that body parser? Let's minimize the terminal, and you can write here constant body parser in the same way of the line number 1, and require what the package name? Package name is body parser, and as usual that body parser package is installed on that package.json. Then the body parser. And what we have to write here? We have to write here app.use, and under the middleware what we have to write, body parser.json. That means the data that coming with the API, we want to use it as a JSON, and after that we can use another extra step, that about body parser dot URL encoded, and we can use here extended true. So what that lines means, that means we are telling our web services that we want to do what we want to do, a shallow parsing or a deep parsing. So what is extended true? Extended true means we want to do the deep parsing, so that we also parse the nested object into the JSON, so that we can use it extensively. Okay, now we have to do one more thing here. Just come to the first route.js file. Here what you have to make, we have to make a post API call. So it's very easy. What we have to write, router dot post, and here send data. I make the route name here in the simple way, just like before. We get here the request and response and a callback function. Okay, so we first check if it is working or not with the simple thing, just like we done here before. So here we pass send data. Okay, that will be a start with front slash, and that first is already pointing. We can remove that because that was used for the testing purpose, and so the path will be /API /send data. Now as I said before, that API you can't call from the browser. So for testing this API, what we have to do, we have to first come to the Postman. So Postman is a API testing tool. You can use any API method here to test your API. So I first make a new collection here. So that collection means you can give that collection name as compared to the project name. So for different project we make a different collection. Okay, so I give here as a node.js. Under that what we have to do, we create a add request, that is send post data. Okay, now here what we have to do, we have to change the API calling method. We are using as a post API, so we write here post, and what is the URL? So that is the URL. Okay, now we want to call that API. So what we have to do, we have to click here send, and you can see the response here, send data, that is written from here. But what is the difference between the post method API with the get method API? In the get API we can't pass any data through the API call, but in post we can do it. What we have to do, we go to the body, under that URL encoded method, because we also use here the URL encoded. So we can write here some parameters, just like name and time, just like. Okay, now if we call that API, and if we run the terminal and come to that here where the server is running, we can't see any response here. Okay, but we are passing the data here. So how can we get that data when the API is calling? For that what we have to do, here we are working with that request method, that we are not bothered too much in the get method. So what we have to do, we have to call request.body, that will be give a body to us, and that body actually a JSON file. Okay, in node.js we can also do the destructuring of the body, but we will learn that later. So what that body is content, so just print it here to see what is body is containing here, that will be print in the console. So we start so we open the terminal where the server is running, and let's call that, just call that API with that data, and you can see in the terminal where the server is running, we get the data that we are sending from the postman as a JSON data. Okay, so as this is a JSON data, we can destructure this object. Okay, so for destructuring, what we can do here, we can do in that way, because that is our object and we are destructuring that object. So we take the key name. So this is called the object destructuring. Okay, and what we can do here, we can write here in that way, name is, and also write here as a time is. Okay, so the server is started and just sent it again, and you can see the console messages is showing here, name is Sam, time is 2. Now what we can do, we also can return that data that is coming from the API after some manipulation. So what we can do here, just remove that because that is not required, and we want to return that data after some functionality manipulation, and that will be returned as a response. So just minimize the terminal for better view, and we can write in that way, instead of sending a single file, we also can send a JSON file here, just like so. If we call that API, and you can see the response of JSON is coming. So what we can do, we can send with that name is, so name space Das Gupta, that's all my title, and we can pass the time here, and the time is, we can give is as a time in that way. So the name is coming from the request body, and that is coming from the API request already, and time is also coming. We destructured the body, and after some changes we sending name and time from the JSON. If you confuse that name with that name, I can change the name. I give it a modified name because that not similar. So I also can give it as a modified time. Okay, and in that way. So let's see if it is working or not. Send it here, and that's working. We sent the name Sam and time 2, and we get the modified name as Sam Dasgupta and modified time as 2 AM. Okay, so that's the post method API that we made here. So let's understand what is params. After that send data, if I write something here as Sam at the rate of 2000, so that the value is not constant. We can give here any value, just like I give here a passport. Suppose you can give here just like Ram at the rate of 2001, and instead of that you can give just like Sam at the rate of 2010. So that value will be deferred, that will be not constant, just like /API/send data. Okay, so we want to use a variable through that route path. The value will be changes every time. So how can we do that? So for using any variable with the route path, what we have to do, we first give here the variable name. We can give any variable name. For that I give the variable name as passcode, and for using that as a variable, what you have to do, before that variable name you have to give that clone. When in the route path, before any of the word you give a colon, that will be considered as a variable name. So now passcode is used as a variable name, and in the API term it is called params. Okay, so how can we get that params? So for getting that params, what we have to do, we have to write here request.params. as simple as that. And we have to write here passcode, not password, and that's the destructured object body, because request.params will be gives JSON just like request.body, and from that JSON we want to take the passcode as a key. So we also want to return here in that, so modified passcode, and give here the passcode, and for the uniqueness we can give here the epoch type, that is famous JavaScript function is returning date.now. So let's see if it is working or not. So here I give Sam at the rate of 2020, and if I send it here, you can see modified passcode is same at the rate of 2020, and that's the epoch type. Here if I change RAM at the rate of 2000 and send it here, you can see it is also changes. How can it changes? Because that's that used as a params, and when in the route path before any word we use that colon, it is considered as a variable, and in the API term it is called as a params. We can get the params from the request.params, and I do here object destructuring to get the key of params, and after that modified I returning it, and that value is changes because that's a variable. So if I write okay at the rate of 2023, if I send it, you can see here that also changes. As simple as that. It is called params. So that all about params. So now let's talk about query. We understand params very easily. Now let's understand query very easily. When in the URL, if we see here as age or in that way, that's are called the query. So here age is the query and category is the query. When we want to use multiple query, how can we write in the URL? After the route path, we have to give a question mark because it is a query, and after that we have to write our first query parameter name and give its value with equal to. If we want to use the multiple query, we have to give the query name after the question mark and with value and with that and operator. So here in that way we can do multiple query, just like here you can see after that question mark all things are considered as query, and here are 4 query we are using. Age, cat means category, topic means topic, and lang means language. So now if we want to get is in our code, how can we do that? Let's come back here. Very simple. I think you understand already. Request dot query. Now we have to do the object destructuring because request.query is a JSON object, same as request.body. And what we have to do here, we have to just copy from here, that is the age. The query parameters we have to just copy from here, so for avoiding any typo. And as usual, I want to send it from as a response. So how can I do that? I just write here queries, and what we can do that, we can write here so what we are passing to that response under that queries key, we are passing each category, topic, language as usual coming from the request.category. We are not use any manipulation on that values of that query parameters. Okay, so when we give that variable name from a map, that variable name will be considered as a key of that map and its value will be considered as a value of that map. Okay, so let's see if the response is coming as a where the queries is a key of that response. So come back here, save it here, send it here, and that response is coming here. Okay, so queries means there are things that is right side of question mark of the URL, and Params means in the route path the data that is changes frequently in every request. Okay, so that's all about params and query. Hope you understand it well. So guys, we learn about the get and post API method very easily. After that, the two main API method is used robustly, that is put and delete. So let's understand at first. So that is not very much complicated or not any new concept. We are using post API in that way. So instead of the post, we have to write put, so that will be a put API. So what is the purpose of using put API where the post API is working fine? Put API is particularly used when we want to update data. Okay, so when we want to update our data in our database, we made the API as put. So put means update. We can change the path is here as a update data. So just like the data is coming, we want to update in the database, so that's why we are using the put. There is no other any strong significance beside that. You can remember that when we make a API that will update the data in the database or that will return the updated data, that will be used as a put. Okay, beside that, all the query, params, body, all concept is same, no any significant difference. Beside that, you can hear about the delete, same things. So what the delete method, how we can define the delete API method? We have to write the delete here. So what the delete is used for? So delete method is particularly used for delete the data from the database. Okay, there is no other strong significance in that. You can do here as here you can see, you can do as just like you understand that you can pass the params. For showing you here, I write as a update data update data, and for here we can write here remove data or remove or delete data, what you want to say. And how can we call that? Let's see if the server is already running. The server is already running because we use node.js. We first here come duplicate it and come here, we write here update post data, and we want to update, so we want to use put, and the method name is update data. Okay, so if we want to send it here, you can see message update data that we are returning from here. In the similar way, just duplicate it, come here, remove that copy, write as remove data, and here also you can rename it update data. And for the remove data, what we have to do, API method delete, and just call it I think there is some mistake. Okay, we forget to update the route path. So what the route path, that will be delete data. So come here, paste here, send it, and the result came remove or delete data as we sending the response from here. Okay, so that's how you can call the different type of API method from the Postman for the testing purpose. Here you can see many more method except except get, post, delete, put we just watched. You can explore it in your own way, but that four method, get, post, put, delete, is the main method, is mostly used in the industry. Okay, so let's talk about the status code of every response. You may be seeing there is sometime internal server error is happening when you open a website and that's showing 500 or 404. So it's actually the server code. So if I go here as a github.com/any random name, you can see here it is showing 404. Okay, so 404 means not found. So in case of any server is crashed, it is showing 500. So 500 means internal server error. Okay, so what's that status code? if we come to the MDN docs, it states HTTP response status scores indicate whether a specific HTTP request has been successfully completed. Actually, what's happening here? We are returning data in a simplest form. But when you are working with a large set of data, there is no guarantee that every time a successful response will be go to the client side. Okay, so what's happening when you working in a large project, there will be many of the constraint will be checked, and during checking of the constraint, if any condition if not matched, we have to send that parameter or that things is missing, we require that for processing further. So that does not mean the request is successfully completed. That means the request that is came from the client side having insufficient data, so that the request can't get completed. So for that we have to send that some data not found, so that we can't proceed further. So it is called 404. So if you want to know how many status code is there, you can see that picture. So here you can see 200 means success, means when all processing is done successfully, we can write 200. I will show you how to write the status code. We can write, if the all data is coming here, we can write here that is that status code is 200. Means what is 200? Means okay, means all the data processed very successfully. Now here, if the age is not there, suppose, so what we have to return here? Then we have to return res.status, and for not found anything, what the status code is used? 404, not found. So we can write here in that way. So we can write status false, and we can give a message age not found. So it is in the post API. So let's test it. Let's see that if it's the server is running, and let's test it. Open the postman, come to the send post, just remove that for the testing purpose, age 22, and send it. You can see here 404 method not found, that we are returning from here, and age not found. So here the operation is not successful, that's why we return 404 not found, because age is not found here. Okay, so that's how you can use the status code as usual. Okay, it's very simple. You can explore it, that many of the status code you can take the screenshot of it and try with different level of the status code. The status code about no content, unauthorized, internal server error, all of the things we will explore. So now let's talk about the controllers. We already made the controllers. That thing actually a controller, but we made it under that route. So that's not very much good thing. So what we can do here, under the project root, we make a folder named as controllers. Under that controllers, we make a file named as fast controller. And here we have to define the controllers that we defines here with that route. That's not a right thing. So what we can do here, we just cut that route, and here what we can write, exports dot get controller, because that controller is associated with a get method API call. Okay, now what we have to do, we have to write get controller, and you can easily understand what I write here exports, because as I said before at the starting of the video, that if we want to export something from a particular file, we have to consider it with module.export that we write in that case. But for the function export, we have to write in that way, exports.get controller. Okay, even you can change it to the ES module in that way. It is totally your choice. Okay, now as we converted it, Let's see if it is working or not, and that's a get method API call, so we can call it from the browser as well. Okay, so let's go to the browser and let's type localhost 8000 API / hello, and it is working totally fine. Hello viewers. So let's try with other API call, just like post method API call, and here you have to write the post controller. And you can see it also imported here automatically when we write here. For the update it's not required, for the delete it's not required, so just remove it for good looking purpose. And we can do in same way. So get method, post method, put method, and delete method. Let's see if all things is working or not. Get method we tested, so let's start the post, put, and delete. So that's the post method. It's not found, so if we go here and remove that, I think we can get the data. Yeah, we can get the data, update data, it is also working fine, and the remove data, I think it's also working fine. So always keep away the route and the controller, but just connect it with that. Never write controller along with the router with that callback function. It's not a very good practice for industry scale project. Okay, now we are going to deploy the API in the remote service so that it can work from any side of the world. Okay, and that's the best important things. Most of the tutorial don't cover that part, but that's the most important things. Making the API and keep it on your local system, it's not a good idea. Make a habit to host your API so that you can showcase to whole of the world and share on the LinkedIn or any social platform so that you can share your knowledge with others. Okay, so for hosting that, we have to first upload it to the GitHub. Before uploading to the GitHub, we have to first do something here. So under the root of the project, make a git ignore file under that root of the project, name as .git ignore. So before uploading it to the GitHub, make a .git ignore file under the root of the project and write here node modules, because node modules we don't have to upload in the GitHub. Okay, and also package log.json. If we want to publish it to the remote place, we have to must use quotes. According to the Indian web docs, quotes means cross origin resource sharing. Cross origin resource sharing is an HTTP header based mechanism that allows a server to indicate any origin domains in port other than its own form, which a browser should permit loading resources. If I tell in the simplest form, just like when you deploy it to the remote service and you are calling it from the local service, your IP and the deployed service assigned IP is not same, so they will not by default allow you to use that service. That will return a error or any message that is not accessing. So for giving the access even when the API is hosted to the remote server, what we have to do, we have to install a package here name as ports. We can stop the server here and we can install the package here name as ports, npm install ports. So how can we use that package? We have to first import that package just like other packages. So in the same way of body parser, we have to use So if we use ports, there will be no conflict between two different IP address. Here you have to write process.env.port or 8000, because when that is deployed, the 8000 port is not used. The port given by the web service where we uploaded that our service is assigned, so we have to write in that way. Now what we have to do here, we have to first initialize git here, because we not initialize when we create the node project. So we write git init, and the git is initialized here. Now we have to see the status of the git. So you can see that will be added to the git. So I clear here, so the better view. Git add all and API tutorial done. Okay, so what file is added in the git.gitignore API first controller package.json route first route. Node modules is not added here, as well as package log.json, because we are included it in .gitignore. Okay. Now what we can do here, if you make a new git repository, just like if you not having a GitHub account, just make a account. It is very much easy, in totally free. Then go to the repositories, click on the new. Here give the repository name, just like, and make it private or public in your choice. And what you can do, create your repository. Now we already commit that, and branch in main, you can do that. I already in the main branch in my system by default, so I don't have to run that step, because I am already in the main branch by default. If you not in main branch by default, you can do that, but that's not mandatory. You by default you are in the master branch. So just copy that, paste it here, and also copy that, paste it here. So that is uploaded. Come here, refresh it, and that's the file of all. Okay, now we have to deploy it. So how can we deploy it? For that we have to go to the render.com. Video is not sponsored by the render.com, by the way. Okay, now as I log in here, so it is showing the dashboard. If you are not logging here, you can log in here, and it's very easy. I am after that login, go to the dashboard, and we want to publish a web service. So I click here new web service, and you have to first connect that web service with your GitHub. So make sure you log in or sign up with the mail that is associated with your GitHub in here as well in render. After that, confirm and giving the password. I come here, and I only permit the selected repositories to permit here. So I give here about node.js tutorial YouTube and save it here. You are being redirected, so I redirected here, and I want to connect that we made. You have to give the example service, so I give node.js tutorial YouTube. You can choose your region. By default it is based. The main branch root directory is dot means current branch. Environment node, that is yarn, and node api.js, no need to use node 1 at that point of time. Yeah, we want to use free because we are using for the learning purpose, and in the advance it is not required at that point of time. When we created a full scale backend APIs, we will use that extensively. So then create web service. Let's see if it is working or not. So you can see that server is running on port 8000. Just copy that URL and paste it here, and you can see cannot get. Okay, no problem, we made a get API with that name API hello.
and you can see it is working fine. So if we copy that base URL from here and we open the Postman here, copy here, paste here, and that's the data. It's working totally fine even with the remote hosted URL. I just copy paste it. Yeah, it's working fine, and let's check for the remove or delete. Yeah, it's working fine. So get, post, update, delete with remote hosted URL, it is working totally fine in render. So guys, in this video we learn about the API development basic, and we also deployed that basic API that we make the service in our local system to the remote server through the render. So guys, I hope that you love this video. If you love this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and don't forget to subscribe this channel. The next video about some of the Flutter series that is coming in very soon, so stay tuned for that. Have a nice day. Bye.